Well, it's official. We'll be getting a rematch to Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrance Crawford. We're getting a part two, the biggest boxing fight in the past decade. We're getting a part two to it. Errol Spence Jr. has officially activated the rematch clause, which was in the contract that the loser has the option for an immediate rematch to happen before the end of the year. Personally, I don't know if it'll happen at the end of the year. It might bleed over into quarter one of 2024. Either way, we're going to get a rematch for Spence versus Crawford. You know, a fight that many fans, we all wanted for years and years and years. And when we finally got, Terrance Crawford said, "I'm the best in the world," in a dominating fashion over Errol Spence Jr. This news was broken by none other than Brian Bomac McIntyre, who's overseas with Chris Eubank Jr., who's promoting a fight, or who's about to fight actually this upcoming weekend. And they obviously asked Bomac about Crawford, and he said, "Yeah, he just texted me the other day that Spence activated the rematch." Obviously, I mentioned in the contract there was a rematch clause for the loser. The loser has the option to indicate and say that there needs to be a rematch to the fight. They had 30 days after the fight happened to do so. The 30 days happened, came up this week, and obviously Spence has said, "Hey, we're running it back. I got to get my get back." So Spence says, "Hey, let's do it again." And I think we all kind of figured that this is what Spence was going to do. Spence has given no indication that he's, one, either scared of Terrance Crawford, or two, has he made any excuses for his loss. In fact, he's put up an Instagram story saying, "Even if I had an excuse, I wouldn't give it to y'all." Made no excuses. His fans have said, "Hey, he was weight drained at 147. It was ring rust." You know, they've given excuses, but Earl himself hasn't given any excuses. And real boxing fans have just said Terrance Crawford is that guy, that at whatever weight, whatever ring rust, if there's none ring rust, it happens again. Well, we're going to see, right? What weight this fight is at. It has to be at 154, only because Earl has said he's not fighting at 147 again. This is the interesting part about the contract, right? The winner gets to decide the weight. So if Crawford doesn't want this fight, he can say, "We're fighting at 147, in which case Earl will have to say, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I'm a 154 fighter now." But personally, I think Crawford is going to go up to 154. He said himself that he even had a little trouble making 147, and I don't think he's staying at 147. He's not fighting Boots Ennis. He's made that clear. He's not fighting Boots. He wants the big fights. He wants the winner of Canelo versus Charlo, which he'd have to jump up in weight anyway. You know, why not jump up in weight and fight Errol Spence Jr., a guy you took care of no problem? Get a taste of this new weight with a guy, obviously, you dismantled easily. Obviously, I think 154 will help give Earl an advantage. I do think the weight played an effect on him, not the effect of him getting TKO'd in the 9th round. Right, you can't blame the weight for that. But I do think the weight, it was a hard cut for Earl. So I think 154 will help him. I'd be crazy to pick him. You'd have to be really crazy to pick Spence, and Spence is, you know it if you've listened to me, Spence is my favorite fighter, probably of all time. It's hard to pick Spence. I'm rooting for Spence, or I will be rooting for Spence and his comeback. But honestly, I don't know if I'd pick any fighter over Terrance Crawford, even a Canelo or even a Jermell Charlo. I think I'm picking Terrance Crawford over every fighter, and includes Errol Spence Jr., who he absolutely dominated in 9 rounds back in July. When did this fight take place? We're not sure. Bomac said they don't have a date. He wants it by the end of the year, which makes sense because Terrance Crawford's going after Canelo Alvarez. He wants that fight. That would be the biggest fight in boxing easily, right? And Canelo's made it a point that he fights in May and September. So if this fight were to happen in the early part of 2024, that bleeds over into time that Crawford gets to kind of rest between fights against Spence, and say if he were to get a Canelo fight in May, right? He wants to get it done so he can go to the negotiating tables and try and get that Canelo fight made, or try and get that Jermell Charlo fight made. Either way, I'm sure Crawford wants to get this fight over, done with, end this duel against Spence, and say, "Hey, after all these years, I'm clearly the better fighter." But no matter what, it looks like we will be getting Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrance Crawford Part 2 coming up either the end of this year or early in 2024. Personally, on Earl's side, right back to timing, I want this for Earl to happen early 2024 to give him time to kind of recover. I think he's recovered clearly. I've seen pictures. He looks okay. His face is back to normal. Give him time to recover, get back in the gym, correct some of his mistakes. And you got to think, Derek James is kind of busy. Right now he's with Jermell Charlo for Canelo. It looks like Frank Martin will be fighting Shakur Stevenson in November. Ryan Garcia has a fight upcoming soon. And Anthony Joshua looks to be in talks to fight early 2024 against Deontay Wilder. So Derek James, he's busy. So it gives more time to get in the lab with James if it's in early 2024 than here at the end of 2023, I believe. That's my personal opinion, but I think that makes sense for Errol. But who knows? This fight might take place in another couple months. Either way, I'm excited, right? This is the fight that fight fans didn't think we'd see forever. We didn't think we'd ever see this fight, and now we can potentially get two of them. And let's see, hey, is Terrance Crawford going to do the same thing at 154? Personally, I think Errol will put up a better fight at 154, but at this moment, it's hard to pick against Terrance Crawford. He is easily the best boxer in the world. Spence activates the rematch clause. That's the big news here. Spence vs. Crawford 2 coming soon. You know I'm going to be covering all here on the Never Drop Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, the Never Drop Podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Never Drop Podcast. I'm covering all Spence Crawford, all boxing. You know what's going on. Make sure you press subscribe. That's all I got for you. Peace. I'm out.